Welcome to Small Town Snarks. I'm Joel.
And I'm Miranda. Let's get snarky. Hello!
Hey, welcome back.
Welcome back.
Yes.
I'm so excited for today's episode because we have a special snarky with us.
We do have a very special snarky with us.
I've never called him that word before.
I'm a snarky?
You're a snarky!
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, this is fun.
You might be one of the OG Snarkies.
OG snarky.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you didn't even know it.
You also contributed... contributed... Woo! All right, for context, I feel like I need to say this to the people at home. We just had a really long audition day yesterday.
We did have a really
And we're buckling
long
up,
audition day.
and we got a callback day today. So
We sure do.
We're excited about it. We're running on coffee and good vibes.
And a prayer, yeah.
And a prayer. But what I was going to say about our special Snarky is that he contributed to the creation of myself.
Wow.
So, in other words...
We wouldn't be here.
I know.
Without this
It's
special
my
Snarky.
dad.
You would be here, Joel. She would not be.
Well, but what is Joel without Miranda?
Oh, that's true.
What's
That's
Miranda without Joel?
Exactly. It's a delicate balance.
It is.
Yes.
It is. But welcome, Erik, to the podcast. We're so happy to have you.
Yes.
Thank you. Happy to be here. So I love the snapshot in time sort of thing. Tell me what show you're doing auditions for, please.
Oh, we are currently in the midst of auditioning for Into the Woods.
Into the Woods. We're going in the woods.
We've been there. We're setting up camp there for a couple months.
We're not going out for 3 months.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But it was actually our biggest audition turnout ever.
Fantastic.
Ever.
That's great.
Big, lots of talent.
So
Lots
much
of
talent. Making our jobs really tough. But
Yes.
at the end of the day, we're going to have just an amazing cast.
Absolutely.
So very excited about that.
Absolutely. Can't
Wonderful.
wait.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Into the Woods, you did Into the Woods in high school.
I did.
So if we want to start there, I'd love to hear a little bit about like how you got into theater in general.
Oh, sure. Sure. So I loved the idea of being in a school play because I saw my high school do a production of Hello, Dolly when I was either late elementary school, early middle school, somewhere around there. I saw the show and I was like, that's what I want to do. I definitely want to do that when I go to high school. But then high school happened and I sort of was a little nervous about trying to do that sort of thing. I didn't know anyone involved in that. So I just I went through my freshman year not doing anything like that. But then sophomore year, I had a couple of friends who were auditioning for The Hobbit. There's a play of The Hobbit. Mm-hmm. And so I went ahead and I auditioned just day of, I heard about it. So I wasn't prepared at all. I just kind of walked in and auditioned, and I got the role of one of the dwarves. Nori was his name. And I think I may have had one line, maybe two, I can't remember, but I had fun. And then I didn't like immediately like, oh, I have to do every show now. I think the next one may have been a musical, and I was pretty nervous about trying to do a musical. So it wasn't until I think it was in the 11th grade, someone ended up not being able to play the butler in Annie, and they asked me if I could come do it, and I was like, yeah, okay, I'll go do that. And then after that, in my senior year, I did Into the Woods. I was the baker in Into the Woods, which I really wanted that role, so it was very exciting for me.
Wow, that's so you like went from very few lines to here's the lead, we're putting the show on you, let's go.
Yeah, kind of, but Into the Woods is such an ensemble show that honestly I feel like the baker is one of the easier roles. It doesn't have so many tricky rhythms, I feel.
It's a very complicated show. Lots of moving pieces, and I agree with you. I think the baker all of those characters have their own challenges, but I feel like he has his own set of tasks and things that make that role unique. So
I feel like the baker's kind of the straight man in that show.
Yeah.
Which I think I can play reasonably well. Probably better than the more eccentric roles.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I will say, like, in prepping for auditions for Into the Woods, I was obviously, like, listening to the music more and really visiting that revival cast recording because I hadn't really listened to that one. I had listened to the original so many times. And hearing No More, just, like, it just got to me in a way that it hit me in a way it hasn't before. Yeah. So I'm really excited to find those kind of emotional nuggets in the show that you know, we're all so familiar with, but I think there's some real gems in there that we need to revisit and keep them fresh.
Yeah, the material is so good. It just is such a well-written show, and I think that's why high schools love to do it so much. It's such it's a big ensemble. The roles are really well crafted, and I always find that story interesting that you had gotten that chance to perform in Into the Woods. I feel like so many people have that close association with that show. So
for sure,
it's a great musical.
And segue time.
Yeah.
I got to sing No More with my good friend from high school, who I also performed with in Heathers.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you smooched him.
I did.
As the character for the show, not just,
Thank you for clarifying.
not just a friendly smooch.
Appreciate
but...
Yes. Yeah. That was quite the pairing in that show.
Yeah, oh my gosh. Your friend who hadn't done theater since high school, right?
No, he hadn't.
Joel and I always tell this story. We will never forget. He was like, his mic kept falling down, and he had such pure intentions of like, I need tape, I need this strapped around my body. And this was actually our first time using body mics, was for Heathers. We didn't use any for Grease.
That's right.
So I don't think we even had mic belts yet. I think people were just like strapping them to their undergarments. So he was like, I need this secure. And I think we were at intermission.
We were. You and I were walking backstage.
And you had started to help him, and you kind of stalled. And I was like, Joel, just wrap the tape around him and let's go.
Oh, yeah. And when you say wrap the tape, we were wrapping tape around his body.
Around his torso.
Around his torso, yes.
To hold the microphone in place. And would you like to share what tape he picked up for that?
So I mean, usually when we do shows, we have, a whole box of different tapes. We have spike tape, we have masking tape, we have every type of gaff tape you can imagine. I was late to the party of him taping everything in place for the microphone, and as I was helping him, I quickly realized that he was using glow tape. Which, first off, not a cheap tape.
No.
But also a really, really problematic thing in a musical. I mean, you might start glowing in the middle of the show. So
it is fluorescent tape.
Yes, fluorescent green, yellow color. Yeah, it was, I will never forget that moment.
It's very fortunate that he had many layers on, and I don't think he ever went on or off stage during a blackout, because otherwise it would look like aliens had arrived at Heathers.
I'll never forget you saying, "Okay, come on, let's go. We got to go." And I'm like, just panicking because it was just.
I remember the look on your face still, and you were just kind of looking at me, and then you were looking at the tape, and it was one of those moments, and we've gotten better at this over the years, but it was definitely like I could tell you were trying to tell me what was happening without saying it, because we're in this small area backstage at the Art Center, and you don't want to yell, Miranda, this man is using glow tape to wrap his microphone.
And to be clear, it was yards of glow tape.
Oh yes. Oh yeah. It was a full wrap around the body a couple of times.
Yeah.
I mean, he committed to it, and I think we've financially recovered from that decision. So
imagine where we would be if we still had that roll of glow tape.
Oh goodness.
That was such a fun moment. He's a great guy, a great and chaotic energy, and I love it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I love that show so much. We'll talk more about Heathers, but
Well, we gotta circle back to Grease.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Let's do it.
I would love to hear kind of what your initial thoughts were when I told you I wanted to do Grease. I don't remember telling you. I know I did, but I don't remember the conversation. So I'm curious.
I can't say that I remember the conversation entirely, but I'm sure that there was a part of me that was like, this is probably not actually going to materialize into a show.
Yeah.
She's probably not going to reach the finish line with this, but I certainly wanted to be supportive and not discourage you. Mm-hmm. And hopefully I was able to do that. I don't know. I don't remember the conversation exactly, though. I don't remember being scared or anything like that. I do remember the show being a lot more work for your mother and for me than I would have ever anticipated.
Yeah. Yeah. I think part of it was, I remember hearing that story about how you and your friends did Godspell in a church.
Right.
And I was kind of just like, well, if they can do this super small scale musical out of a church, of course I can do the huge Grease and rent a venue and stuff. And it didn't seem like that big of a jump in my brain at the time. I was like, well, if they can just put on a show, then I can just put on a show. Like, I kind of equated them as 1-to-1, and they weren't at all. They were they kind of were, but like, Grease was way more involved than I was ever anticipating. I think that was a big part of it. And I didn't fully realize, because since we were doing so much of the work at high school, I didn't realize how much of a leap it would be to transfer those skills into like starting a business and starting to do this by ourselves. And to some extent it was a big leap, but I do also think that foundation allowed us to do that. But there were definitely times where I remember you and Mom kind of being like, well, yeah, if it looks like it's going to happen, we'll help you build the car. So I think there was a little bit of denial there at first of like, sure, I think you guys were kind of just along for the ride, but you didn't necessarily think it was going to be a show at the end. And what's funny about that to me is, like, I guess in my naivete or like just young confidence, there was never a doubt in my mind that it was going to be a show. Like, I 100% was like, of course it's going to be a show. Luckily it was, but it could have gone south.
I really love that mindset of, it doesn't surprise me at all that you knew that this was a goal. And I just really like this idea of, okay, so we're going to help you as long as you continue to move. Like, if it's moving in the right direction, we'll reach this milestone, then we'll help you with the car. Okay, we'll reach, like, it just keeps happening. And as it becomes more and more real, it's like, okay, great, it is a thing, and it's just going to keep going. So
that was actually a question I was going to ask you, was there a point in the process where you thought, oh, this might not happen?
The first day of tech.
That's
Yep.
That's what I figured.
I had a moment where I was crying in the light booth, and it was just Jacob and Dakota up there. And they actually reacted the best way possible, I think, because they kind of like looked at me, they acknowledged me, and then they were like, well, we're going to keep doing lights, and you can, take your moment and figure out what you need to figure out, but we're going to keep working on this while you're up here. And I was just like, oh. And I think in that moment, if I had gone to the wrong people who maybe they would have said something like, you know what, it's okay, you did your best, it didn't work out. But because I went to people who were like, yeah, you work through whatever that emotion is, and we're going to keep working on getting this show done. That's what I needed in that moment, to be like, all right, I've got people down there that are waiting for me to give them direction, because this is a crap show right now, and I need to collect myself and figure out what the plan is. Yeah. But that was definitely the first time I was like, I don't know if this is going to happen. And I think also with the mindset that you guys kind of had of, well, like, let's see if we get to this step and then we'll work on this thing. I imagine it was a little bit difficult because I at least didn't really have much of a concept of cost of some of these different things. So I imagine you guys were kind of like, well, maybe don't buy $500 worth of lumber until you have a venue, or like stuff like that.
Sure.
Because that's hard. And I do remember a couple times, especially with Mom going out to like the hardware store or the fabric store and just being like, it costs how much? And that's for just that one thing. Okay.
Yeah. I don't want to repeat things you've already discussed. How much have you discussed the car?
Not a lot.
We really didn't talk about the car a lot. No.
So I did rewatch the show a couple of nights ago, and had a great time doing that. Watched it with your mother.
Yes.
Miranda's mother.
Very nice.
Yeah. The car came out, and your mom exclaims, "Oh my God, that wooden car." And then she said, "The car's wearing clothes. what did we do? Because the car comes out and it's wearing fabric. It has fabric covering the entire thing because we need that transformation into Greased Lightning. And yeah, I had completely forgotten about it. The car was entirely made of wood. It had, it was structurally sound enough where people could stand on the back of it and on the hood because that was important for the dance number. That was your requirement, Miranda.
Yeah.
You had to have that happen. And it also separated. So you could bring out just the first half of it for Sandy when it appears again.
Forgot about that.
Which was brilliant, I think. And I'm sure that was your idea, Miranda. And yeah, I was super impressed. Super impressed. I know that originally you had wanted the clothes to go back on the car before Greased Lightning ended. And at a certain point we were just like, there is just not enough time to do that. That just cannot happen. It was built so it could happen, but there was no way it could.
Well, and that's... I mean, we've had so many of those experiences where, like, there's something you want to do and you hit a point and you're just like, yeah, what we wanted is going to be modified.
Oh, yes.
And I think that's just part of theater, but I had forgotten about the fact that was very resourceful that we were able to use the front for Sandy, and I can't take full credit with that. That sounds like a Jen idea, for sure. I think she probably contributed to that, but we ended up, like... Just that car alone took probably 3/4 of the width of the backstage, I would think. I mean, it took a lot. And we also had the doors, which we had cut down to one door. And we had the bleachers and the picnic table.
Oh, gosh.
I actually remember the bleachers after the show was over. Someone who saw it bought them. They were like, oh, I didn't know that we could have bleachers fit on the Art Center stage, but I saw that you did it, so I would like to buy them. And I was like, well, we did it, yes, but it wasn't very easy. There was a lot of maneuvering and angling them just the right way to get them back into the backstage area.
Well, they actually went immediately outside.
Yeah.
After they were used, we took them right out the back door, and they stayed on that loading dock.
It's a very
for the rest
common
of the show.
Art Center practice. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to do what you have to do. There's
Spend
not a
the
lot of
first day
space.
of tech just figuring out the mechanics of everything. So.
Yeah, and we had talked about this, but there were only 2 days of tech. So we had the first day, which was, what were we thinking? And then the second day, which was, okay, like, let's try to get one run through in.
You added another day, didn't you? Didn't you pay and go ahead and toward the end of that first disaster day, I think you made the decision that, we need another day.
I thought we had added a bunch more hours, not a full day.
That could be true.
But we did add something, yes, for sure. Yeah, because we booked it. I think it was more hours because I think we had scheduled tech for Wednesday and Thursday.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure, but I could be wrong. But yeah, and just the costumes. Like, there were stacks of costumes throughout our house. And
you don't say.
Yeah. And the set pieces. And I remember vividly at one point in time, I picked a fight with you guys. I don't know what it was about. And I remember you you were folding laundry in our kitchen because that was the place to do it at the time. Okay. And you sat down the laundry and you were walking towards me, and just by your face I was like, I didn't mean it. I'm too tired and I don't know what I'm saying. And then you stopped and you were like, okay. And then you walked back to the laundry. But it was just one of those moments where you're just like, you're so exhausted, and just the people around you. I think that's a lot of, growing up in the same house and just being around your family, because I was still living at home. It's just, you get to a point where you're so tired, and those are the people near you, so they're just the nearest targets to be like, this is my tired, angry rage that you're just gonna experience because you're here.
So, Joel, this show consumed every moment of our lives. And, she was in it, my son was in it, I was in it. The sets were being built in our garage.
Oh, yeah.
Costumes were being sewed in our house. Everything was happening there. There was one day where I think I came home from work, and I came home from somewhere, and there were flats laying on my front yard drying.
Yep.
Sounds right.
The car was parked in my driveway.
I will have to say, I mean, we're talking about this process of preparing for Grease, but Miranda recently shared on a previous episode an interesting story, Erik, that I'd love to ask you about.
Oh, okay.
Apparently there was an ant story.
There is an ant story, yes.
Yeah, would you like to share your perspective on the ant story?
Yes, one of our lovely Greased cast members, which I do want to give them all a shout out, because I'm sure you talked about the rehearsal process. They were rehearsing in our backyard, in a playground to have access for bleachers. Some of the rehearsals were indoors, but a lot of them weren't. And it was in summer. And they were doing stunts out there in the heat, in the sun beating down on them. A lot of people, I think, would have just been like, no, thank you, and just exited at that point. I mean, could you imagine some of the folks that we work with now doing that? No, right? So I just a shout out for them. We didn't have a single person leave, I don't think.
Nope.
They all stayed and they worked their asses off. And it was, oh my goodness. Watching it again, some of those numbers that were done so precisely.
Yes.
It was such skill and care, and obviously the rehearsal was, anyway, I digress. So the ants. Yes, one of our lovely castmates had fried chicken that he was eating during one of our rehearsals in the backyard, and then he left his plate there outside while he continued to rehearse, and then it made it into our kitchen trash can. And the next morning I was exercising, and I was doing this on the floor in the room next to it, and I looked down and I could see just movement on the carpet, and there were just, I was surrounded by ants, and there was a trail of them leading back toward that trash can.
Oh my gosh.
Opened up the trash can and the plate is just filled with ants.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, that's the ant story.
Yeah, theater gives you some crazy stories. That's a new one though. I'd never heard that story before until Miranda shared it. That is.
Another thing I have discovered about my dad is don't surprise him by leaving a wig head somewhere. They freak him out. I've left them around the house because, just we have wigs, they need heads. So they'll just be sitting random places, and he was like, Miranda, they freak me out, especially when you leave them in the basement. Yeah,
they're a little unsettling.
They can be.
Yes,
some of them look realistic too, which is, I think, much worse. But I think we only got the realistic one for Evil Dead, so we haven't had that one too long. But
you weren't living with us at that point, so
no.
it was safe.
Yeah. So I think going through this conversation with Grease, Erik, you have quite the history of performing with Small Town Stars Theater Company. Yeah. Over the years, and we're just getting started with the first show. But you want to tell our listeners who you were in Grease and what that experience was like?
Yes, I think the character's name was Teen Angel. I think, and look, I had not been on stage. I was on stage briefly in college for one show, very small part, but really I hadn't done much of anything since high school. And Miranda's directing Grease, and I kind of looked into it a little bit, and I was like, well, I think maybe this part is actually, like, it could be age appropriate for me, and that might be something that I could do. And Miranda at the time was talking about, maybe I could gender bend that role. I could do this and that. And I think I just said to you at one point, I might like to try to audition for that. Would that be a problem? And I imagine that was surprising.
Yes.
For you, right? Yeah.
It never even crossed my mind that you or Mom would want to do that. Like, it just never occurred to me. I think, honestly, it's been cool, like, having those experiences, because, at least to me, that means you guys trust me as essentially a boss, and, like, that meant a lot. I was like, oh, he actually wants to do a show that I'm in charge of. That's kind of crazy. So that was definitely a cool moment. I kind of knew that Kyle would be auditioning, but when you guys started having those conversations, I was like, oh, okay, cool. It's a family affair now. We'll see what happens.
No, I'm very comfortable with STS in the fact that I believe that universally, regardless of who is directing, they're setting you up for success. Their job is to make you look good, and I feel comfortable with that. But yeah, I went ahead and auditioned for that role. Was nervous about it, felt really intimidated because, I mean, there was a lot of talent in that cast.
Yeah, they were all really good.
Yeah, yeah. But I had a really great time. I enjoyed myself. It was chaotic because there were still set pieces being constructed, reconfigured, painted, taped, whatnot during actual shows. So I was, during Act 1, I would be backstage, not in costume, nothing like that. I would be working. I would be putting finishing touches on the car. I'd be fixing something that broke. And then finally, at some point, I think it was like after High School Hop or something like that, I'd be like, okay, I gotta cut this off. I gotta stop. I gotta relax. I gotta drink some water. I gotta get into costume and focus a little bit. And then I was able to do that and get on stage and do my number. And then I had to stay in costume the rest of the time for curtain call. So I don't think I worked after the number. So it was chaotic, but it was also fun. It was really a thrill to be back up on stage. I had a really fun time with that.
Yeah, you definitely got the bug again, I would say.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
This is kind of like a side question, but I'm curious. What has been your favorite performance with STS that you've done?
Probably Squidward with SpongeBob.
That was cool.
Yeah, it was also the most stressful, but yeah, it was one that I challenged myself with. I'm not a dancer, so I really worked hard on it, and it was satisfying.
Yeah.
Iconic. It was really.
It
was. Yeah, that show. It was such a blast to see, and
I do remember Jacob's brother was there, and he was like, he's seen almost all of our shows, and he was like, where did they get that guy? Referring to Squidward. And Jacob's mom was like, that's Erik, that's Miranda's dad. And he was like, what?
That's awesome.
They thought we paid someone to come in and do the part.
They thought I was a ringer.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they were very, very impressed.
Wow.
It's hard to tap dance with that many legs, 4 legs.
So what happened over time is the elastic, I don't even know what part of it had elastic on it, because I didn't make the legs, but it would stretch over time, and the back legs started to pull down. And by the end of the performances, on times when I was just on one foot, I was being pulled to the side. So if we had one more show, pretty sure I would have fallen down. But luckily we didn't, and everything went just fine. But I can see it when I watch the video of the last performance. I could see, I get up on one leg and I can see my body shift immediately.
Oh my gosh, that's
when
scary.
It happens. I have a question for the two of you.
yeah.
Yes.
Joel, do you have a bucket list STS show?
Ooh, a show for STS to do?
Yes.
Oh gosh, I will say, and Miranda and I have talked about this a lot, but like, been very fortunate to do a lot of shows that I'm very passionate about. I mean, Pippin was very high on my list of shows I wanted to direct. Bright Star was the first show I directed solo, and that was very, very high on my list.
Yeah.
I don't really know if I can think off the top of my head of something that's out right now that's accessible, rights are accessible for that I'd be
no
like...
logic.
Oh, okay.
It could be Book of Mormon.
I don't know. I feel like I get into this habit of like, I'll listen to a show or I'll think about a show, and then I'm like, okay, well, there's an opportunity here that I can explore about what my interpretation of the material would be and finding ways to work with that.
Okay.
But yeah, I've just been very blessed is kind of a strong word for it, but I've had a lot of really great opportunities to direct shows that I'm just really passionate about. So
Nice.
There are a couple I can think of that I think are on your list.
What are they?
Doll's House.
I am really passionate about that play. I think that'd be a really fun one to
And Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime.
I do like that play.
I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been directing a lot of musicals recently. There are a lot of plays out there that they're a different kind of piece. They're a different kind of story to tell, and you get to flex different directing muscles with plays than you do with musicals. So I think those would be probably two really good responses to that question.
You don't want to direct Wicked?
I know, logic aside, but come find me in 2058 when the rights come out, and I'll consider it then.
Miranda, same question.
Hair, probably, but I also realize the hair is partially known for the nudity scene, so that's something that I would have to really noodle on and figure out how I want to approach, and hope that I have the people who are invested in that vision who are like, yeah, I'll do that on stage.
So you have to noodle about whether there are noodles on stage.
Yes. Well, whether there will be exposed noodles or not,
right.
Is the thought. But I think I would have a lot of fun directing hair. It just speaks to me for some reason. Another one is waitress. I've had so many people come tell me, hey, I want to do waitress. I'm like, yeah, you and me both, but we gotta wait. So I think I would be good at that one. But there's a few. I think hair's the big one for me. I've been talking about it with Joel. He's like, that is not my show. And I'm like, yeah, I know. It's okay.
I will say, I think there are some shows that you and I have discussed that we'd really love to direct jointly, which kind of fall in line with that question. But I know we're both very passionate about falsettos.
Yeah.
We're also very passionate about, Next to Normal, those kind of like heavier dramas.
I heard that's being filmed in the West End.
It was filmed in the West End, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
yes.
Nice. Yeah, so I do love a good heavy subject matter musical or play. So, yeah.
You have a dream director show.
Director show?
You talked about with me.
Oh, Kimberly Akimbo?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a wonderful musical.
I love that show, and it's such a great fit, I feel, for this theater company. As
Yeah.
well.
Yes.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good question. I hadn't thought about that in a minute because we've just been going so fast that sometimes it's nice to step back and be like, what shows am I really like eager to get my hands on?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's always interesting from a directing standpoint of like, what can I do differently to the material, or how can I do that show a service by presenting it in an interesting way. So I always like to think about that. What I would do if I had the chance. So
yeah. So any of your STS alums who are listening to this are either really excited about what you said, or they're really disappointed. Yeah. Or they're like, what about Shrek or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, Shrek's fine. I think too, with something that's exciting about shows like Kimberly Akimbo or Bright Star even. I know we experienced this with Bright Star, but the challenge is getting the people to come, right? You have to convince them that this is something they want to see.
Yeah.
But once they were in there, we got so much like positive feedback about, I didn't know this story at all. I came in blind, and oh my gosh, such and such scene or character really moved me. So that's always kind of the double-edged sword with that is, it's really, those shows are really a rewarding experience as a director because you get to introduce people to a new show that they probably haven't heard of.
Yeah.
But from a business perspective, it's really, really hard to sell. So one of my goals is I hope one day we can get to the point where, the whole community is just coming out because STS's name is on it and they know it's going to be something cool, and they get to experience some new material that maybe they didn't catch when it ran for 6 months on Broadway or whatever short run it had.
Yeah, I think that's always my mindset of it with it too, is usually the shows I'm super passionate about I've seen productions of, and like that was the big thing with Bright Star, that I saw it and I was so moved by it that I was like, if I can present that story in a more accessible format for the greater community, then that's the way to do it. So
I think that's how I feel about Kimberly Akimbo. It's touring, so I think more people are probably seeing it now, but it's still kind of a small show.
Yeah.
Well, here's the plug. If you haven't listened to or seen Kimberly Akimbo, go check it out. It's really fun, and it has, in particular, a great opportunity for an older woman in the show that is just a very unique role that they don't normally get to play. So definitely something to to be on the lookout for. But I remember like as we started to move from Grace to Heathers and into these like we're starting to do full seasons, more niche shows, like even Bright Star. Like, we'll get to that. We'll do a whole episode on it. But people being like, oh, during that scene, I saw me and my dad up there, and like just you start to get these really moving and empowering stories, and then you go on and you do I don't know, like Matilda or something, and you're like, yeah, this is fun. It doesn't feel the same though.
When a musical when a show can say something more than just what it's saying, I feel like it's when you've hit your sweet spot.
Oh yeah,
in the show.
Yeah, but I want to transition to Heathers a little bit.
Oh, absolutely.
If everyone's down.
I just want to circle back to Grease just
yes,
for a moment.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Did you talk about the doors?
I did talk about how we went from 3 doors to 1.
Uh-huh.
I didn't speak more about it, though. I've loved for you to share your perspective on the doors.
Oh, no, just seeing the door on stage. And first of all, at the end of the first number, when they all have to exit through the one door.
It never looked good, and it never really worked.
And then, you turn it around for the background and Hopelessly Devoted to You, and it's so crooked.
Yep.
Because it's barely hanging out. The door, that's one of the things. Every single performance, that's what I would be working on. Jen and I would be backstage working on the door, trying to get the door to stand upright long enough to have its big moment on stage. Yeah. I hated those doors.
I think watching Grease too, hopefully you were as well, I was pleasantly surprised with how much like really solid stuff was in there.
Yes.
And then there were a few things, and the doors was one of them, which I was like, yeah, I would cut that.
Yeah, the only other thing I wanted to talk about with Grease was the safety aspect of it. You and I had a couple of tough safety conversations during the rehearsal process because there were kids being tossed up in the air and things like that. There was one rehearsal in particular I remember where someone did get hurt. I can't remember who it was or how it happened,
right.
But I remember us having an awkward safety conversation about that, and I was just curious how you're feeling about that.
I have mixed feelings about it, actually, because I do think whenever possible, you should keep your performer, you should do your best to keep your performer safe and minimize risk as much as you can, right? Since then, we've never done a show with as many tricks, but we still sprinkle in tricks, which, when you're talking about tricks or you're talking about people going up on set pieces or whatever, there's some inherent risk, but you try to minimize it to the best of your ability. I think that sometimes people forget that in performing arts, there's a big demand on your body, and it should almost be treated to the same extent of a sport, like football or baseball, or like you're putting a lot of stressors on your body. And I do think with Grease in particular, there were times where I was asking too much of people who weren't experienced in doing those things. I definitely think if I were to do it again, I would pull it back quite a bit. But I do also think that there were people in the cast who didn't believe they could do those things, and by the end realized they could do something they never thought they were capable of.
I totally agree with you.
So I think there's a middle ground somewhere that I feel I've been getting closer to as I've grown. But at that point, I was just like, let's risk it all. Let's go. They could do it. And I can understand why in some of those moments, as an outsider, you were kind of like, hey, this is dangerous. You're like throwing someone up in the air and someone just got hurt. Like maybe you should cut it. But I was also coming from a cheerleader background. And in my background, people got hurt every single practice. So it was normal to me, but I don't know that it should have been normal. So,
well, theater became a sport for Grease rehearsals.
That is for
sure. And I will say that when I watched Grease Lightning, I had tears in my eyes. It was really, really well done. I thought all of the choreography across the board with that show was really, really solid.
I was just coming off of high school, coming off of cheerleading, and I was very specific with what I wanted the choreography to be for that show. And Yeah, Grease Lightning. I mean, there's no denying that it pushed the performers probably to their max. I mean, they're like, and sometimes it was okay. I've had enough here, but
you pushed them to their max, and then they had a quick change.
Yes.
Then they had to run and change into their outfit.
And they still had half a show to do. So
it was really something.
It was nuts, but luckily, it did pay off. And yeah, I hope I answered your question. I feel like I gave like a non-answer answer,
okay.
but
it was good enough. I would say to segue into Heather's, the thing which I also watched recently, just finished it this morning. The biggest, I think, kind of elevation on that show that kind of sets it up above Grease, I think, is the things in between the musical numbers.
Yes,
right?
the transitions.
The transitions, just the scenes between them. So much in Grease, so many of the scenes happened in front of like the main curtain.
Yep.
Because of big set pieces and that sort of thing. But not the case with Heather's. It just felt more cohesive. The look also, I felt was a little bit more cohesive. Really enjoyed watching that again. So, Joel, that was the first one that you worked on, right?
That was the first one that I worked on, yeah.
Was there a moment in that show where you were like, I'm pretty sure this is not actually going to happen?
So, it's a really good question. So we talked briefly just my experience seeing Grease, and from that, Miranda reminded me, but like after that experience, I remember saying to her, like, I'm on board, like whatever you need. I still to this day am like, wow, you should have asked me earlier about Grease, but it's fine.
I can't.
Awesome.
I want to just like. I want a parallel universe where you would have been working on Grease with me, and just to see how different it would have been, or would it have been similar? I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, so it was that night after I saw Grease where I was like, Miranda, I'm on board. Just, let me know. I want to be a part of this.
Put me in, coach.
I wasn't at that time really privy to what was going on behind the scenes to get Grease on stage. I don't believe, from my memory right now, that there was a time where I thought Heather's was not going to be ready. It was my first show that I had done since high school. I mean, essentially. I had done a show or two at college, but otherwise it was like the first real show that I had done. And I felt like all of the moving pieces were there. And without having that background from Grease, I'm like, Miranda knows what she's doing. And of course, one thing I remember very clearly early on was that I think I had that mindset so much built in that I was like, Miranda knows what she's doing. I'm just going to be here to support. I stage managed. I'm here, whatever. And I remember one of the first times you asking me, okay, what do you think about this? What are your thoughts about this? And you started bringing me into that process. But there wasn't a time where I was like, yeah, this isn't going to happen. There's no way this is going to happen. It was such a solid show. Now, there were things that pushed the boundaries a little bit, and there were a lot of things going on to get us to that point, but there was never a moment where I was like, this is not going to happen.
Interesting. Good.
It was just such a highlight, just a highlight of an experience. And it was something about seeing that show on stage and like exactly what you said. It was all one piece, and it was so easy to move everything around, and it just was a well-crafted show from that standpoint.
Which that set actually was heavily inspired by the Falsettos revival. Because I remember after we had seen that on Broadway, we meaning me, you, Erik, Jen, and Kyle, and actually your friends as well from high school. Basically, the revival had a big cube that they would pull pieces off to form the furniture pieces, and it also had compartments that they had props in. It was like a character, and it lived on stage the whole time. I remember after we saw that, kind of brainstorming in the kitchen and like drawing out some sketches of like, okay, how can we implement that idea into Heather's? Because we know that it was super stressful to have all the moving pieces for Grease. How can we keep all the pieces on stage? And I feel like that was a direct learning from Grease of like, okay, we're gonna scale back and we're gonna try to keep everything on stage when we can. We didn't have nearly as many moving parts, and we did have a platform with compartments that had stuff and sometimes people in it.
That was a surprise, though. That wasn't supposed to happen.
That wasn't, but that was a Miranda special.
We wouldn't have had nails sticking, poking out from the inside of that.
Yeah.
Well,
speaking of that safety conversation.
all right, this is making me look a little bad, but here's the thing. That particular actor, I warned them. I said, this is not for people, and it has nails, and they were like, I'm going for it. And I was like, okay, you got the spiel. Like, I feel like I should make you sign a waiver, but you're doing it. And we did put tape over the nails, so it wasn't as bad. I just think about that now. Out of certain people that we've worked with recently would explode on the spot if I tried to do that today.
Well, also, doing all the rehearsals in a barn in the middle of the summer.
Oh, yes.
Too.
With a porta potty. Yeah.
The porta potty.
It's something else from that experience, and it just. I was aware of the rehearsal process for Grease. I think I remember just seeing all of the photos that were up on social media of oh, we're here today. Oh, we're here today.
They're just a traveling circus.
They are. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then being at the barn
there were cows though, and that was super cool.
Cows.
And you could walk up, and they would lick your hands, and then you would just go over to rehearsal.
Yeah.
And
what could go wrong?
What could go wrong?
Yeah.
But it was a good time, and we actually did those rehearsals on your friend's property, who was like, yeah, I got this barn. We loaded the set in. We had the set there from day one, which was amazing.
Yeah.
And we had the pit there from almost day one, which is unheard of.
Yes.
Shout out to them.
Yes.
Yeah, and they were very good as well. So all of that was really cool, but the barn felt like a big upgrade at the time. It was like, ooh, we got our dedicated space. We didn't have to pay for it. That was a big thing.
That's true.
We don't have to pay for this. And meanwhile, there's random Christmas decorations and stuff shoved in the back, and it's you know what? That's cool.
Great. Yeah. We got a space.
We got a space.
We got a space.
And space is hard, and for people in theater, they know you. Spaces are always hard, and there's never enough storage.
Nope.
That's basically the big things.
Yeah.
And something I did want to talk about with Heather's is I know you had some big concerns at the beginning of, I don't think this show is going to sell.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I would not have heard of the show had you not mentioned it to me.
Yeah.
So, that I don't remember having those concerns, but I'm not surprised at all. Why would people want to go see a show that no one's heard of?
And the movie that is a cult classic and people haven't really seen. And I remember at the time, when I talked to you about it, I was kind of it'll sell. Again, young Miranda.
We played that game many a time.
Build it, people will come. It'll be fine. We sold for Grease, and it was fine. Thinking Grease and Heather's are the same, I guess. Well, what I didn't realize, I basically struck gold. We did that show at the time where people were loving that show.
That was the summer of Heather's.
I didn't know that, I just did it because I liked it. I didn't realize, this is a strategic business move, and this is going to be amazing. And when we had the moment of we're getting ready to open, I still remember this. We're getting ready to open, and I look outside, and I'm like, there's a Heather Chandler walking around outside, and it was just I think she was a teenager dressed up as Heather Chandler, going and grabbing some coffee and stuff before she came to see our show. That was you want to talk about the coolest thing ever. At that moment in time, I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. I did something that people wanted to dress up to attend.
Yes.
What? So that was really, really exciting.
Striking while the iron was hot. Yeah, it was definitely the summer of Heather's.
Yes.
Everybody wanted to do Heather's, and everyone wanted to be a part of Heather's. Everybody wanted to see Heather's. So, I didn't realize you all had that conversation, but because I had the same reaction you did. I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many people here. You could do any show you want. There'll be thousands of people lining up at the door.
We learned after that, but we'll get there.
I was very happy to be wrong about that.
Yeah.
I think that's the first time that you had to have a sign up where the tickets were saying it was sold out, right?
Yeah, we had sold out. Yeah. The Art Center brought in every chair they could find, but at a certain point we were sold out. Now that was
really cool.
You talk about getting cocky. You go from your Grease, which was the first show, which surprisingly sold well, and then Heather's, which sold out, I was on cloud nine. I was like, I'm unstoppable.
I can tell you, as a performer in Heather's, playing before that audience was really special.
Oh yeah, I especially
they were so into it.
like Candy Store. The second Candy Store hit, every time people would just erupt with noise. It was yes.
Well, speaking of performing for Heather's, you had a very fun role for Heather's. We talked about it briefly at the beginning, but would you like to share more about your father role in Heather's?
So,
you actually had a couple roles in
I
Heather's.
did.
Yeah,
I did. So I got to play my son's father, which I'm accustomed to doing. But I got to do that, and I got to do that musical number, Dead Gay Son, with my friend from high school. That was just tons of fun. And I can remember the first rehearsal where Miranda cleared the room and was like, okay, now we're going to work on the intimacy. So we did that. I learned what he had for lunch that day because his mouth was not fully closed the first time we kissed. But that improved over time. Again, we weren't skilled performers. We were learning as we went. But I can remember when she called everyone back in and we ran the number. Just I think I made eye contact with your sound engineer, and and he was just kind of I don't know. I can't even describe the look for our listeners that I got from Daryl.
Yeah.
But
I think also, I definitely, respect the fact that you went for that role, and that we're talking 8 years ago at this point. So it's kind of hard to find, and especially then, like, grown men who are willing to kiss another grown man on stage.
Sure.
It wasn't, like, we're in a rural area. It wasn't the easiest thing to just find someone who is willing to do that. So I think you and your friend being willing to do that in the show and, like, respect the material in that way, and just being like, it's just a kiss. It doesn't have, like, hold a big significance, but I definitely think you gained a lot of respect from the rest of the cast that day, for sure.
The way I described it to Jen afterwards, after that first rehearsal, was like at a certain point, it's like kissing someone's elbow or something like that. It's not intimate at all once you get over that sort of hurdle.
It just becomes like choreography.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah, but I thought that was great that you guys did that, and during the show we had rainbows going across the psych. It was like such a fun moment.
Yeah. I'll always remember, and this will transition to another question that I have for you, Erik, but I'll always remember setting up the stage at intermission to get ready for Act 2, and just knowing that moment was coming up, it was just a wild moment to start Act 2 of that show. Just
that's fun.
Set the energy really, really high for a show.
What was it like performing with Jen and Kyle in a show? Yes. That was the first time doing that with both of them.
It didn't feel like unusual at all to me. Kyle had done so much theater at that point through high school and this that I wasn't at all concerned about him being able to do his thing. I was more concerned about me being able to do my thing. Little concerned about Jen doing her thing because it was like Grease was for me. It was her first time since high school getting up on the stage.
Yeah.
And it's wild doing that again after a long break like that.
Yeah.
You did that for Legally Blonde, right?
You
had a pretty long break, and then you went
I did, yeah. Oh, yes.
Which we'll talk about in a future episode.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I'm actually glad you asked that question, because for me, as someone who had known you all for a very long time by that point, like, seeing you all, like, together working on a show was super special, but, like, what did it mean for you, Miranda, to be working with everybody? Because that's a great question. It was a family affair.
Yeah.
That was like the Seculas presents Heather's the Musical by Small Town Stars Theater Company.
It was surreal in some ways. So the audition process, which they all auditioned, and our friend Brooks, who like helped a lot with those early auditions, made it very clear to me, but also like I knew this was the case. He was like, if they're not right for parts, I'm gonna say something, and they're not getting the parts. And I was like, yeah, like as you should. And they want to know, like if they audition, they want to know they got the part because they were best for the part. So I mean, I think I was very fortunate in the fact that they were all the best for those roles, and I didn't have to like go through like necessarily an emotional toll of like, you're not getting cast. I'm sorry. So once we started all working together, it was definitely interesting finding that balance of, okay, like, especially with both my parents there. I think that was the bigger thing. Because I had worked with Kyle a lot in high school as well. But with both my parents there, it was like, all right, like, I'm their daughter. I still live with them. So, like, I still follow, like, their house rules and stuff. But, like, here, I'm their boss. And also, I need to make sure that, like, I'm treating them as equally as everyone else as I possibly can. And I want to make sure the cast isn't, like, oh, she's, being weird around her family or whatever. So it was tough because, being so young and like just starting out and figuring out, okay, like what are these boundaries?
Yeah.
And I feel like we've done a really good job of establishing those. But I know one of the first things I did is I made it clear, like with Grace and also with Heather's, I called you, Erik, and Mom by your first names. Yeah. And in business settings, that's what I do. Like at home, they're Mom and Dad, or well, he's Churro, which is a whole other story. That's just what I call him. But when we're working in a professional capacity, they're Jen and Erik, and I don't think they've ever been offended by that. But I know I've had cast members who are like, "Wait, you're calling your Mom and Dad Jen and Erik?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, I'm working with them professionally right now. Like if I worked in the same office with them, I wouldn't be like, hey, Mom." So I think just that simple thing really helped set the tone for other people of like, oh, okay, they're just people. Like they're not, and I also wanted the cast to feel like they could bond with you guys and not like they had to be like, oh, hush, hush, like those are the director's parents. So I don't know if I can be friends with them.
I really like that you share that, just because, I mean, especially in those early days when so many people were, we were friends with Miranda in high school, and we had known Miranda for a really long time. Seeing you all create that type of like professional relationship, it did exactly what you described. It like made us feel like we were having a professional relationship with you all, very different from how, previous years of knowing you all. And it was just really interesting dynamics and like seeing how all that played out. And it just always seemed like you all always had such a positive working relationship beyond family relationship, which was really cool to see.
Yeah, I think that was something we were able to create together, and I'm really proud of that. And I do remember at the end of Heather's, like, having this moment of, like, oh, that was, like, really special, getting to direct my family on stage. And I know, at least for me, and I think for you, too, like, one of our bucket list items is I would love to perform with them someday. Like, I would love to, do a scene with Erik or something in a show. One day the stars will align and it'll happen. I was kind of in SpongeBob. I was, like, performance adjacent. But, yeah, it was really cool, like, getting to have that opportunity, but also I do feel, I mean, they did help a lot, but I do feel proud of the fact that I was, like, kind of able to make that happen for them, if that makes sense. Like, I definitely had a moment of, like, if I hadn't started this, I don't know that my mom and my dad and my brother would all perform in a show together. And, like, because I did, they're all here and they're doing it. And, like, that's super cool.
Oh, there's no doubt.
Yeah.
There's no doubt.
Yeah.
And, in fact, I would go so far as to say that your mom and I would not have performed again, period.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's really special to me, as I feel like it's created an outlet for them. And I also think it's, sometimes it is tough for our family, but I feel like ultimately it's brought our family closer. And like, we've definitely had, hard conversations because of it. We've had fights because of it. But I feel like at the end of the day, I think we get to see each other more because we have this thing that we like to do, which is pretty cool.
Is this a good time to tell you just how depressed and upset I was when I heard that you were going to do a second show?
Yes. Why were you feeling the feels there?
Oh, Grease was just all consuming.
Yeah.
Well, it was fun to be on stage again. It took over our entire household.
Yep.
And you know, you were still a teenager at the time. Your brother was a teenager at the time. Those are not the easiest parenting years, and just having a show take over your house on top of that was just about my limit. Like if it would have been any worse, I think it may have broken me. And then to hear that, oh, I'm definitely doing another show next year, I was just like, oh my God, please just take me now.
And then you heard that she invited me to be a part of the process, and you said, okay, great, no. Joel's coming in, great.
Not Joel.
I do have a Jacob story with Heather's that I just adore, is every time in the booth, you would say the line, I don't remember the exact line, but it was when you're JD's
playing
dad.
grab ass with your girlfriend.
Yeah, he would always go, playing grab ass with your girlfriend.
Every time. He had that habit of picking out one line, and that, yes, oh my God.
And he loved that line.
Playing grab ass.
When I was watching the show earlier today, that part came up, and I was like, Jacob.
Yeah.
That was Jacob's line. That's why I remembered it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's definitely chuckling. Because he just was so fixated on that.
And it was every show. Every show,
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
I mean, later on, he started just watching Daryl, which is also a good time.
Playing grab ass with your girlfriend. Yeah.
I remember that scene
iconic.
so well because when I walk in, Veronica and JD are having a very, very tense conversation, and they are both really good actors. And I felt like, you want to talk about imposter syndrome. I walked out there and it was just like, what am I doing? I'm walking into this where they're just doing that so perfectly, and I'm talking about playing grab ass. And anyway, it was humbling.
I've definitely had those moments as well, and I think with the person who played Veronica, who we call Paulette, we're not using their real name until I get permission. But her, and there are other performers that I've worked with as well, where I'm just like, I'm gonna give them direction, like me. You want me to tell them what to do? All right. Heather's, there was definitely a moment at that first read through. Everyone just like started singing the songs, and I just remember looking around like, they don't need me. Like, they... Which isn't true, and it's important to recognize, like, everyone brings unique skills to the table, but some of these people who work with us are just, like they could be doing this professionally.
Yeah.
And we will be seated
Yes.
in the theater when they
yes.
are. We will. But,
I expect to be.
It's
Yes.
very, very cool, and I totally understand that feeling of walking out and just being like,
It's intimidating. It really is.
It is. And I remember feeling that even when I performed in Avenue Q recently, which I don't normally perform. And I remember feeling that level of like, should I really be here?
Right.
But then you look around and there's probably 20 other people also feeling that same thing. And you just, you band together and you put on a great show together.
Yeah, for sure. Well, was there anything else you wanted to add about your Heather's experience?
I don't think so. I had a lot of fun. I can remember during our rehearsal, we had most of the day dress rehearsal before we went into Tech Week.
Yeah.
And it was a very hot day. And I can remember I took a picture of one of the shirts I was wearing, one of my costume pieces, because it was completely wet when I took it off. And I was like, it's really hot.
And that was back when my mom did the show laundry, and boy, oh boy, do I miss that. There is nothing like, you have a bag of costumes and you throw it into your washer and you try to keep your head away, but there's no way to describe the stench that
God help you
comes out of
if
that
you wait
bag.
too long. If you wait too long and that bacteria starts...
Well, and she had to wash the costumes all the time because we were outside and the costumes were too sweaty. Like we could not, Lysol was not going to cut it.
No.
They had to be washed, and I have a lot of respect for her doing that task because it was hot. It was really hot.
Unsung hero.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Joel, do you have anything else to ask? I have one more question.
I don't have anything else to ask.
We will definitely have you back. But
absolutely.
my one last question is, what has been your favorite show that STS has done?
So for a long time, I said Rent. I'm biased because I was a part of this, but I loved the production of American Idiot.
Yeah.
That may be it. But there are so many of them that I love. Little Shop of Horrors was fantastic as well. Spring Awakening,
Yeah.
for a long time, was my number one answer until Rent came along. I still think Spring Awakening was just remarkable.
Yeah.
I think there were things that were
good one.
done in that production that elevated the show above anything that I'd seen, any other production of the show I'd seen.
Yeah. American Idiot definitely holds a soft spot, and we'll have to bring you on to talk about that, because that was when we directed together.
Yeah, looking forward to
Very
that.
exciting.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for coming to the podcast, Eric.
Absolutely.
You're officially a Snarky.
Yes.
Well, thanks for having me on. I was a fan first, and now I'm a Snarky, so it's a big day
There
for
you
me.
go.
Yeah, and shout out to Susan Secula, who I'm sure is going to love this episode, because she always listens, and she's going to be happy to hear us chatting about theater
Sure.
together, I'm sure.
Hi, Mom.
All right, Joel, well,
Yes.
I will see you next time for more tea.
Yeah, we'll start talking about Heather. So
Heather,
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 Heather.
and someone.
All right, that's a wrap. Have a good one.
Alrighty.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for getting snarky with us. We'll see you later.
See you next time.